The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Ben Hassler presiding. We all rise for the Right Honorable Judge Ben Hassler. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of the People versus 2006's The Wicker Man. Appearing on the prosecution, we have Dylan Schlender. For the defense, we have Rob Maynard. It looks like serving on the jury today, we have Ryan Luis Rodriguez and, oh my God, Frank Conniff and Trace Beaulieu. Wow. Thank you, gentlemen. I would have thought you two know how to get out of jury duty.
Not that smart.
Well, welcome. The case today features a remake of the classic 1973 British horror film and tells the story of a police officer played by Nicolas Cage who investigates the disappearance of a small girl on an island populated by neo-pagans bent on human sacrifice. For those unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this movie is guilty of being bad. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful. And the burden lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Schlender, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may begin with your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. People of the jury, if only we could bring more severe charges than just saying this is a bad movie. We need a Nuremberg-style trial for how terrible this movie is. For you see, it is a remarkable mess of a film. It is anchored by a ridiculous tone, a tortured reinterpretation of a much better movie and novel, and of course, we can't ignore the awful, awful acting, particularly that of none other than Nicolas Cage. This movie offers nothing to the viewer, and the absurdity ultimately results in a laughable fracas. I noticed on the second viewing that the movie ends with Nick Cage screaming. I had not noticed the first time, as his screams were drowned out by my own. Thank you.
All right, and for the defense, Mr. Maynard, your opening statement, please, sir.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the jury, I think this film has garnered a very unfair reputation based predominantly on two things. One, Nicolas Cage's outlandish, over-the-top performance, and two, the fact that it's a remake of an undeniably better film. I'll stipulate right here in my opening statement, the 1973 version of this film is better. But that's not what we're here to determine. We're here to determine, on its own merit, and the original notwithstanding, if this movie is a bad movie. And I believe if we look at it in a bubble, we'll find a quirky film that manages to stay moving and remain interesting, while of course, because of the original, we already know what the ending is going to be, this film still manages to keep us guessing about how and why. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maynard. Mr. Schlender, you may proceed with your first piece of evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. What I would first like to bring up for the court's consideration is the tone of this movie. It's a bit hard to pin down because Nick Cage's acting throws us through a loop, his bizarre blend of sincerity and, bizarreness. So we are aching for something to happen this whole movie. There's an absence of tension or any meaningful suspense. It makes us feel like we're just running around this island with Nick Cage. Nick Cage dispatches himself to this island to try to find this missing little girl, and it takes him about an hour of an hour and a half to figure it out, despite the overwhelming evidence that something bad has happened and maybe he should get the FBI involved. But he'd much rather ride his bike and scream at people. And
Objection, Your Honor. How would he get the FBI involved? He's unable to leave the island except through help of the harbor master who's been murdered, and he has no phone reception and cannot call off the island.
Yeah, he
I'm going to
trapped.
sustain that for the time being. Nicolas Cage is trapped on the island.
He is trapped on the island, but he went there under the premise of a girl being kidnapped. You think he would have had, like, it would have made sense for you, because he is a cop. He's not just some guy, right? This isn't like a Silent Hill or something where he's just.
Well, he is some guy, sir, but he's some guy in a different jurisdiction.
He is in a different jurisdiction, which is all the more reason you think he would touch base with, if not the FBI before going out there, at least the local authorities. But he goes out there completely half-cocked, and it results in him dying. So
the objection is sustained. I'll allow you to continue, Mr. Slender.
All right. So while he's running around, all we could do is lament, when are we going to get to the Wicker Man? And we end up laughing at the movie, not with it, because there's no feeling of urgency, and every punch and kick that Nicolas Cage delivers could have been replaced with us checking our watch, waiting for the next thing to happen. You know, why kill the airplane pilot if the whole point was to get him onto the island anyway? He was doing what he was supposed to do. Why have a hotel if no one's supposed to be
Objection, Your Honor. The point in killing the pilot is to prevent him from leaving the island.
Yeah, but the pilot was in on it. There's no way he could have, flown the plane away by himself anyway, and the pilot was told to bring him there. So
was the pilot told to bring him there, Mr. Maynard?
I don't know that. We don't see that the pilot was told to bring him there. Nick Cage bribes him with $100, and that's how he gets there.
But the whole point of the movie is at the end that's the big reveal, is that it was a setup the whole time to get him out there, to put him in the Wicker Man and burn him to death. So how was?
Are you suggesting that the pilot was in on his own murder?
No, I'm saying that they betrayed him for reasons that are unknown, like just not come back to the island at all, until after the harvest.
Okay, order. We'll have to leave this ambiguous. I don't know that this question is answered in the film itself, so we'll let the jury decide if this hurts the movie or not. Mr. Maynard, did you have a rebuttal to the slow pacing of the first half of the movie?
I don't have much of a rebuttal. It is a slow pace. It's a mystery with a lot of knots that seems, I'd call it convoluted. However, if you compare it to the original is very similar. It's a convoluted type mystery where, frankly, we're kind of just trying to be introduced to what this island is about before we burn Nick Cage alive. That's all it's about. It's about, here's this island, here's kind of what's going on, and we just want to get to Nick Cage burning alive.
And it took so long to get to it.
If you've seen the original that you like so much, sir, it takes a long time to get to the Wicker Man.
The original is a slow burn, Mr. Slender.
And I'm not saying it's not, but it's crafted and executed a lot better than this soulless remake is.
That's true. Okay, Mr. Slender, do you have any further points?
Well, basically what I was going to say is why even do a remake? Because this movie had nothing new to offer the audience. So it's a warmed over retelling of the original story with a quasi-feminist bent. But this is not an ode to Betty Friedan. Oh, no. We are treated to a tortured bee analog. So we have the queen bee and the drones, and this is not particularly interesting or creative, and it's certainly not empowering. So where the movie struck gold, it had something to say. This rehash is deaf and dumb and really dumb.
Okay, I'd like to hear from the defense on the queen bee and the neo-feminism aspect of this remake.
I patently disagree with the counselor. I find that to be the singular most interesting thing about this film. Now, when you look at the original, it features a devout Christian police officer, played by Eddie Woodward, who's sacrificed to the heathen gods of an island of pagans, led by the incomparable Christopher Lee. It's no doubt a classic. But the 2006 remake makes a lot of interesting choices to help it distinguish itself from the original. And one of those is the distinct personality of the island's pagans. Now, unlike the original, the
objection.
Pagans,
none of them showed any personality.
I'm about to go into, as already you touched on many of it, this is a matriarchal society led by the mysterious Sister Summerisle. Due to the major crop being honey, the society is basically composed of beekeepers, or as Mr. Schlender might say, apiarists. And because of this, they model their society structure on that of a beehive. So women are the predominant members of society, and they're the authority. The men are nothing more than mindless drones. I'm glad Mr. Schlender could pick up on that. And they're kept around strictly for procreation and manual labor. They're seemingly
is it feminist, though, considering that they're evil, that they're murdering people?
I can't say it's necessarily feminist. It is matriarchal. And what I would like to point out that Mr. Slender didn't is the character of Willow, played by Kate Bean, leaves the island or the colony in order to find a remote mate on the mainland who winds up being Nicolas Cage. This is behavior reminiscent of a young queen bee who leaves the hive to start her own hive. And Willow, as we find out, is the daughter of Summer Isle's resident queen bee, Sister Summer Isle. So while the original pits paganism against Christianity, that's absolutely the fight in the original film. This film, I think, focuses on the masculine versus the feminine, the patriarchal versus the matriarchal. I mean, Nick Cage is a cop and he's a man. He's used to being taken seriously everywhere he goes. And he's totally undermined and thrown off base when he's picked up, taken a fish out of water and put in a place where he's dismissed, he's defied, and it pisses him off throughout the movie. And I think it's interesting to see this balance of power tipped on its head like that. And I'm not sure I've seen a film that represents that sort of matriarchal pagan society, not until years later with 2019's Midsummer.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Mr. Slender on that matriarchal versus patriarchal aspect.
I gotta say, with all due respect to my colleague here, like, that is a pretty big reach. The reason they're disrespecting Nicolas Cage so much is because they're trying to get away with his eventual murder. It has, like I said, there's no empowerment here. It is just this analogy of like, hey, wait a minute. Bees have queens, they have honey, so we're going to do that. It's easy, it's sloppy, and the subterfuge that goes into getting Nicolas Cage there has nothing to do with the fact that it's the patriarchy versus a matriarchy or anything like that. It has everything to do with the fact that they just want to kill him.
Okay, we'll leave that for the jury to decide. Mr. Slender, did you have any further points on prosecution?
I would just like to say that Nick Cage's acting can't be ignored. It's the big B in the room, if you will. His cop is one note the whole time, as Mr. Maynard pointed out. He's just angry the whole time. You don't really feel for him. He has no growth, no depth. I mean, it only takes 30 minutes into the movie before we're treated to the flashback of him not being able to save that little girl. So it's like, okay, we get it. He's motivated to save this little girl. I think it's pretty understood. But we get that flashback like 5 more times. So in case you missed it, he's there to save a little girl. And then that's maybe a little bit compelling, but they go a step further and say, oh, by the way, this little girl's your daughter. We didn't need that. We already knew he was there to save the little girl because he couldn't save the girl at the beginning of the movie who was in the station wagon. You know, so...
did you have a point about Nicolas Cage in the last act as well?
And then in the last act, I mean, he's just screaming the whole time. I mean, he's punching people, he's kicking people. It's very bizarre. He's in that outlandish bear costume. The whole conceit of the whole movie of getting him there to sacrifice him, this elaborate ruse they built up to have the daughter like tied up for him to go save, and then just to lead back to the people anyway. I mean, just tackle him while he's there. And they already took the bullets out of his gun. Like, what were they waiting for? You know, it's like, it was just a ridiculous premise that did not serve the movie well. And Nicolas Cage's over-the-top acting just made it all the more painful. Like, you wish that they would have muzzled him instead of breaking his legs, because we got to hear, oh, my legs, oh, you know, it's like, oh, my God.
Why is it burned? Why is it burned?
Yes, exactly. So... There you have it. Nicolas Cage's bad acting does this movie absolutely no favors. You're laughing at it, not with it. That's what really makes it bad. And I will turn it over to the defense. I rest my case.
Is Nick Cage going to Nick Cage, Mr. Maynard? Your response?
Touching on the point of Nick Cage, obviously this movie is notorious for his performance, but honestly, anyone who goes into a Nick Cage movie not expecting an outlandish performance is setting themselves up to be disappointed. Arguably, The Wicker Man, along with, say, Face Off, really establishes that style of his, a reputation that Nick Cage now carries proudly and is getting a lot of recognition for. Without The Wicker Man, you don't have The Bad Lieutenant, Mandy, Richard Stanley's recent and extremely excellent Color Out of Space. These are movies that feature Nick Cage at his Nick Cageiest, and that's their charm. I don't want to watch a Nick Cage movie with a muted or stifled Nick Cage. I want him at his most extreme, his most zany, out of control, over the top. That's the niche he fills to me as an actor. So for me, this film not only satisfies my Nick Cage sweet tooth, it's the film that really sets the bar and solidifies it to me in my consciousness.
But that doesn't make it good just because Nick Cage is acting over the top. It completely grated against the rest of the tone of the movie. Face Off, him being a crazy villain, makes sense. All those other movies you said, like his over-the-top performance makes sense. It doesn't make sense in this movie. It's just too much.
And to touch on, if I may rebut on the point of him punching the women are going to, at least he assumed, kill that little girl. And some of them are about as large as he is. So, I mean, I've got no problem with him hauling off and socking them. I mean, they would do the same to him. So I think it's simply a matter of self-defense. He wasn't punching them at first. He punches them when it becomes necessary. And the last point I would like to make before I wrap this up is that we're talking about remakes. And if all remakes are bad, then we would have stopped adapting The Wizard of Oz at the 1910 silent version, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. If remakes are bad, then we wouldn't have John Carpenter's 1982 film The Thing. If all remakes are bad, then Martin Scorsese would never have made 2006's The Departed, a remake of the 2002 Hong Kong film Internal Affairs. I can go on and on about truly exceptional, excuse me, sir, truly exceptional remakes that exist when done well, from The Magnificent Seven to Scarface. But we won't have the opportunity to try and tell these stories better if we never have the opportunity to first try to tell them differently.
What was your point, Mr. Splinter?
My point is, we're not saying all remakes are bad. We're saying that this particular remake is bad. Okay, so you're trying to raise this movie up by pointing to much better movies, right? But that's not going to fly here. The jury's too smart for that.
The objection is sustained.
To me, the point is to attempt to make.
You can attempt to make any film a remake or not. The point stands: is it good or is it not? And that's what we're here to determine in this.
That is what we're here to determine. I agree. And with that, the defense rests.
Okay. Well, both of the prosecution and defense have rested their cases. We may proceed with the closing arguments. Mr. Schlender, you are up.
All right. We do not need more bad remakes. The remakes you just mentioned, some of those are really good. You know, Wizard of Oz, Magnificent Seven. I love Magnificent Seven, right? We cannot reward bad remakes. On the contrary, we must punish bad remakes. We have in this film a tone that the director had no control of, completely out of his depth. We have some of the worst acting we have ever seen from Nicolas Cage and his bevy of co-stars, all one-dimensional, all expressionless. This movie is not sincere, it has no value, and peoples of the jury, it is bad. Do the right thing and find this movie guilty. Thank you.
And Mr. Maynard, your closing statement, sir.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the jury, a lot of the criticism aimed towards this film is based on it being an unnecessary remake. And while I do agree there are too many remakes coming out of Hollywood, I don't see this film as so much a remake as I do somewhat of a sequel or a companion piece, because it makes so many different and interesting choices. The story themselves have a lot of distinctions. The societies are quite disparate in structure and organization. Yes, they both feature a missing girl and an island of pagans, and sure, they both end with the protagonist burning to death in a large sacrificial bonfire, granted. But I ask you, members of the jury, can we honestly say we have enough movies that end with the protagonist burning to death in a large sacrificial bonfire? If anything, I'd like to see more end this way. Think of how much better Adam Sandler's Jack and Jill would have been if it ended with Adam Sandler burning to death in a large sacrificial bonfire. Or if at the end of Twilight, all the characters had been systematically rounded up and swept inside of a Wicker Man. Heck, it certainly would have made Annie Hall a different movie. In fact, I'd like to see an entire Wicker Man franchise start up, a whole Wicker Man cinematic universe where every single film ends with the protagonist burning to death in a large sacrificial bonfire. Think of it. The Wicker Man 2, The Wick and the Dead. Wicker Man 3, Get Witch or Die Frying. Wicker Man 4, The Importance of Being Burnist. Think of the possibilities afforded to us when we say, yes, I too would like to see more movies that end with the protagonist burning to death in a large sacrificial bonfire. Think about it, won't you? Thank you very much.
And John Wicker Man, these write themselves. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you both, members of the jury, Mr. Beaulieu, Mr. Conniff, Mr. Rodriguez. You have heard all the facts concerning this case. It is now up for you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
All right.
So to start off, since we want to hear you guys actually talk about this stuff, what is your experience with the original Wicker Man from '73?
I haven't seen that film. So I would say, since I haven't, I like it. And even though I haven't seen the 2006 version, after hearing you guys talk about it, I don't like it.
Oh, all right.
And Frank?
My experience with the first one is that I bought it on DVD in a big box set that was like kind of a wooden box that it came in, very elaborate. And the packaging was so awesome that I didn't want to ruin it by watching the movie. So I just stared at the packaging, and that I enjoyed very much. And as for the remake, it's I have to say it's a little disconcerting to hear three people argue about the Wicker Man, because I didn't know that many people had seen it. So, and I think that one thing that they're leaving out of that I think you have to factor in with any Nicolas Cage performance is how big of a house payment did he need to make that month when he was making, and that's what's determined Nick Cage's his film choices. You know, a lot of actors have a very laborious process where they try to decide whether they should do a movie or not. Nick Cage's process is, can you meet my quote? And once they meet his quote, he does the movie. So, so I think you always have to factor that into account, discussing any Nick Cage film, and hearing about him being burnt to death at the end of the movie makes me feel like he'd be perfect for a remake of The Towering Inferno.
Ooh, I'd watch that.
So I'm saying the film is not guilty.
All right. So, well, now that we're actually on the subject of Nicolas Cage, like his performance in this movie is kind of notorious in that several of his lines have become memes since the 2006 release. But like, as somebody who doesn't actually like this movie, I honestly think that Nick Cage's performance like pretty much saves it. Like, I haven't seen the original, so I can't comment on whether or not it's a good remake, but it seems like a movie that is like miscalculated from the very beginning, and the only thing that is going to make it memorable or enjoyable is Nick Cage looking at a script and going, yeah, I can dial that up to 11. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I agree with you, and you know what, I think what other people talk of as a fault of Nick Cage and being over the top is actually one of the things I like about him is he just kind of goes for it, and I think I would say that his flamboyance as a performer makes even bad movies entertaining, but anybody who's seen Ghost Rider knows that's not true. So.
He might make them entertaining, but he doesn't make them watchable.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's funny because one Nick Cage movie that that people have a lot of good things to say about, a recent one, Mandy. Trace and I did a podcast episode about that, and if you listen to it, you will know that both Trace and I hate that movie.
You know, and I got to call out this. I have to call out the court for the vetting or lack of vetting you have done with your jury, because I clearly came into this extremely biased and very bigoted in regard to Nick Cage. I don't know if I was hoping there would be video because you could see my extremely obscene Nick Cage T-shirt that I have, I would have been disqualified, or maybe I'm overqualified. Wait a minute. No, I still think you should declare a mistrial because I'm clearly more prejudiced against Nick Cage than I am about almost anything. Maybe Brussels sprouts.
We are a fake movie court, so we're fine with biased jury members.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
biased
okay.
all the time.
I thought the belt-mounted hand phaser would give me away, but and also I'm grateful to the court that I no longer need to see this film because you've told me everything about it.
That's what we're here to do.
And you know, the weird thing with me, and this maybe should have disqualified me from being a part of this, is my favorite Nick Cage film is Superman Reborn. So
If only.
I thought Birdie was like going to be an origin story for Superman, but upon recent viewing, I guess I'm wrong. I still like to believe I'm right.
even though Superman Reborn wasn't made, it's still better than Man of Steel.
Here, here.
I do not disagree with that whatsoever. So, in addition to Nicolas Cage and the remake, so the writer-director of the film is Neil LaBute, who is not particularly known for like suspense thrillers or horror type films. He's more known for kind of small misanthropic dramas about objectively awful people being jerks to each other. But I guess that's not too dissimilar from this. But like Trace and Frank, have you seen his other movies like In the Company of Men or like
Yes.
Betty?
I've seen.
And what do you think of them?
I liked In the Company of Men. I think I saw one called The Shape of Things. Was that what it was called?
Yes, yeah, that was 2003, I think.
That was, but I think he's good when he writes an original script or bases it on one of his plays, and he's very much in his own territory and his own sensibility as a writer. I think his films are always there's another one I saw. I can't remember the name of it, but Ben Stiller was in it, and
I'm trying to think of the name of it.
yeah, it came I think very soon after The Company of Men.
But Your Friends and Neighbors.
Yeah, I think that was it. And they're all kind of the same thing. They're very dark. They're very like human behavior at its worst, which which is fine with me. I mean. If that's where your sensibility is, I'll watch it. I think where he gets into trouble is when he gets hired, like in the case of the Wicker Man, to work on a big project. There's another one he did called Nurse Betty with Renee Zellweger that has a great cast, but I just don't think is a very good movie at all. So I think I like him when he's working on his own thing. I don't think The Wicker Man was originally a play that he wrote that was done off Broadway. You know, it was a whole different thing.
And Trace, what do you think?
I have not seen any of his films. In fact, the box set I purchased contains absolutely no content. It just takes up space on my shelf, which is okay until something replaces it. But I'm very uninformed, other than seeing a lot of memes from The Wicker Man with Nick Cage, mostly with the bee cage on his head. Mm-hmm. So I think I've seen most of the film that you've described in just that single frame.
Yeah, that's
it does sort of sum it up.
It's kind of an interesting position that we find ourselves in, kind of not being terribly familiar with the movie itself, because I've only seen the movie with riff tracks. So I basically I only know what's funny about it. I don't actually know kind of what's in between. So I guess we're all kind of going in blind on this.
It doesn't sound like it's really true to the spirit of beekeeping. It's very difficult to do.
Trace is a beekeeper, by the way. That's
Yes.
absolute truth.
Right.
And even though I've had the urge to put the hive on my head, it's just not a good thing. It's expensive. A hive of bees, you get a box of bees in the mail. Well, not in the mail anymore, but it's the $75 to $100. So unless this cult has got like all kinds of money, it's just wasteful. It's wasteful. And there's nothing better than local honey, especially if you have allergies.
Is there any movie that actually portrays beekeeping properly that you think it does it respect?
Yes, the seldom seen Jerry Seinfeld movie, The Bee Movie. Very, very accurate.
Also, I think the Swarm is an accurate portrayal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yep. And Bee Girls.
What about Deadly Bees?
Yes, because it has the word deadly.
So, Frank, what are you leaning towards? Guilty or innocent?
I say not guilty, innocent, because I know it's irrational, but Nick Cage's finances concern me. I know that he overextended himself. He bought too much property, and he found himself in trouble, and he had to do something about it. So I say not guilty on that basis.
It's those castles, man. They really rack up the bill. And Trace, how are you leaning?
I would have leaned or lent or been bent that towards not guilty, but since Frank took not guilty, I have to take guilty, just to balance the scales of justice.
All right.
We appreciate that.
I think I'm leaning toward guilty too. I think the defense made some great points, but ultimately, I don't think that even Nick Cage, at his craziest, could possibly save what is ultimately a very baffling film. So I think I'm going to go guilty too. So I guess we have a consensus.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus 2006's The Wicker Man, we find the accused guilty of being a bad movie.
Bullshit!
Shit! Justice. Sweet, sweet justice.
Very well, and I sentence Nick Cage to actually have a big thing of bees put on his head and think long and hard about what he did, although it would be wasteful to Mr. Beaulieu's point. But still, justice must be served. Court is adjourned. Hey, Benderson Cooper standing outside here, the Reels of Justice courtroom. We just heard the verdict that The Wicker Man is guilty of being a bad movie. Mr. Slender, what is your thoughts on this verdict?
Justice has been done. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I believe in the work we do here. I believe in the Reels of Justice, and I want to thank our most distinguished and handsome jury for coming to the right conclusion.
All right, and Mr. Maynard, your thoughts, please.
Bullshit! It's bullshit! But I do appreciate that I was able to at least sway Frank Conniff to a not guilty. So it's a moral victory for me.
You'll always have that little badge on your shirt right there. All right, and that does it for the Reels of Justice. We now cut back to the studio for a post-trial analysis.
All right, that was great. It was a great trial. Thank you, Frank and Trace, for offering up your thoughts and opinions, although you either haven't seen the film or haven't seen it in a long time.
I'm going to make a point of seeing it now.
Maybe a point of not seeing it, absolutely. And so you guys have a live show coming up. Tell us a little about that.
That's right. Tuesday night. What time is it, Frank?
Tuesday night, August 18th at 8 p.m. Trace and I will be doing a live streaming riff of The Tingler, and it costs $10, a portion of which goes to the NAACP, and it's a fun night. And if you buy your ticket by Showtime, you can watch it live, or you have the option of watching it later if you can't watch it at that particular moment. So either way, we hope people will tune in. We already did Glen or Glenda last month as a live streaming show, and it was a big success, and people had a lot of fun. So we hope to have people back doing it. We're looking forward to it.
I love your guys' live shows. I've seen you guys every time you come into Denver, except I missed one. So there's one I'm waiting for you guys to do through streaming. The one with the biker film with the guy from EGA.
Choppers.
Oh,
Choppers.
right,
Yes.
Hey, we'll get to that one. Don't worry.
I love Choppers. Actually, it's compared to EGA, it's like a very entertaining film.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I've seen almost everything you guys have done live. I've seen Neanderthal Man. I've seen Walk the Dark Streets. I've seen Glen or Glenda. I've seen The Tingler a couple of times. So I'm looking forward to seeing this new live show, because it should open you up to a lot of people who haven't gotten to see you yet. And to clarify, that is 8 p.m. Eastern time.
Yes.
Eastern time, yes.
Very good.
And it's on Eventbrite. You guys have put a link up.
Yes, we will.
So it's easy for people to find. But it's really easy. You just go to Eventbrite, plunk in your info, and you can watch us on Tuesday.
Yep, we'll include that link in the episode description so that everyone can click on it too. And now, in your opinion, if we put The Tingler on Reels of Justice as a trial, do you guys think it would be guilty or innocent?
Innocent.
Yeah, innocent.
Yeah, it's. We were talking just recently with someone else about it. It's much better than most of the films we did on Mystery Science Theater. It's very well made. It has a great cast, especially Vincent Price, who, as always, is great. And but the script is just goofy enough that you can that you can riff on it and get a lot of fun out of doing jokes while it's on. But it's really kind of a delightful film.
That's what we call the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's really hard to hate a movie that has a Vincent Price acid freakout.
Yes.
Yeah,
One
exactly.
of the first movies to feature LSD.
Yeah.
He didn't even know the cameras were rolling during that.
Yeah. And it's got a great creature. The Tingler is a classic inspired idea by William Castle.
Yeah.
Is that what attracted you guys to do the movie? Or is this something that's been on your radar for a long time?
I had an argument with a fan over whether or not it was public domain, and that's why we're doing it, because he was right.
I love it. That was great reason to do anything.
Yeah, I've liked it, and I assume everyone's going to have to electroshock themselves at home to properly scream.
Yes.
Yes, actually, this is a good way, because when we did it live in theaters, none of the theaters set up the system where you could get electrocuted. But at home, you can probably rig something up for yourself to electrocute yourself while you're watching.
Get yourself your dog's shock collar or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you hear that, listeners? Frank Conniff says to electrocute yourself, and you can take that to the bank.
Exactly.
There's probably safer ways. Ask your mom or go look in her nightstand, because there's probably something here.
There's probably something in there.
Frank.
And it had the process of the tingling. It had a specific name, but I can't remember it right. I think it's Percepto, but that might be a different William Castle. Okay, you got to admire the ballyhoo of William Castle.
Yes.
He was a great showman, and someone who really set out to entertain people. And there's actually, you guys probably know about this, there's actually a really good movie about William Castle that Joe Dante made called Matinee, with John Goodman playing a character based on William Castle. And I'd recommend people check that out too.
Matinee's great. It's got the giant mosquito.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mant. It's the half man, half ant.
There is Popcorn is the one with the giant mosquito.
Yeah.
Sorry. There you go.
And Sci-Fi did a film called Mansquito.
Ooh.
It's true. Great
man
minds
was
think
the
alike.
same year and just flatlined it.
Yeah. And now last month,
Manskito starred Sting.
Yes, it did.
really? I hear he's got tantric performances in that.
Yes, goes on
Very
forever.
long movie.
Very long movie. Yeah, Terrence Malick directed it. Now, last month you guys did Glenn or Glenda. So, do you guys think Glenn or Glenda would be guilty or innocent?
Innocent.
Absolutely innocent.
I
Glenn
totally
and Glenda is an ahead of its time movie. It's it was made in the 50s, and it's a call for compassion for people who are transvestites or transgender. And it's real. I mean, Trace and I have done it more than we've done any other film. We've riffed it probably 40 times, and we never get sick of it. I mean, it's completely batshit, and
Yes.
it has all the qualities you want from an Ed Wood film, but it's really wonderful, and I'm a big fan of it, and I'm a big fan. I unironically love Ed Wood.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I think that film is just so sincere that
Yeah.
the riffs are hilarious and you laugh with the movie, but it's hard to ever laugh at it because it's being so bald-faced sincere.
I bet if we could sit down with Ed Wood and riff with him, I bet he'd riff with us. But I think he would know how much we love that movie.
Yeah, it's really a shame that he died, so young, relatively young, and he never got the chance to see how much people ended up being entertained by his movies.
Oh, now I'm bummed out.
You should be, Ben.
Like a Van
and you
Gogh
You're still alive, did you, Ben?
and you guys have plans to continue to do shows like this every month?
Yeah, we will. As long as people tune in or whatever this is called, signing in,
Logging on.
logging on. That sounds dirty, but okay, whatever. Whatever your kids want.
The kids like it dirty.
Awesome.
Ben,
Then I
you
do
gotta
hope
stop saying
Choppers
that.
is.
Yeah,
I do hope
Choppers.
Choppers is coming sometime in the future.
Choppers.
That would be great. I do love me some Choppers. Now, do you guys have a suggestion or a recommendation, each of you, for a movie you think people should check out?
I am very fond of the 5-hour version of Wim Wenders' Until the End of the World, which is on the Criterion channel right now. I liked it at its shorter length in the theaters when it came out 30 years ago. But it's just a beautiful, wonderful movie.
It's 5 hours long.
Yes. Is that not long enough?
I suppose it could be. That's a mini series, basically.
Well, we're binging anyway, so
True.
you watch 5 episodes of Better Call Saul, or watch this film.
Can you tell me the title one more time? It's The End of the World?
Until the End of the World.
Until the End of the World.
Not many
Cool. So if
people
you've got a spare
know
5 hours, check that out.
I highly recommend. You can watch little pieces of it and come back to it, but watch it all at once.
Yeah, and I'd recommend. And speaking of the Criterion Channel, and I hope it's still there, but there was a film that was very little seen when it first came out, called Mikey and Nicky, written and directed by Elaine May, starring Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, and it's really a brilliant film. And Elaine May is one of my favorite people ever to be in comedy and make movies, one of the most influential people. And this film is really brilliant and it's like kind of a gangster kind of a story. It's well worth people's time. It's called Mikey and Nicky, and I believe it's on the Criterion Channel. And I also recommend, if you just want a fun action movie, an enjoyable action movie. I saw a film on Netflix called Fury, Furie. It's a Vietnamese film, and it's basically the plot is very much like Taken, except with a female protagonist who kicks a lot of ass. And basically the premise of it is, what if Taken had an interesting lead? So it's really, really good. Great action sequences. Really, truly exciting fight scenes and suspense scenes. And I really enjoyed the hell out of it.
That's on Netflix?
When I saw it, it was on Netflix, yes. Furie.
Okay. Got to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mikey and Nikki, that was the movie that Elaine May made right after A New Leaf.
Yeah, she made it after A New Leaf, and she had a lot of problems with the studio, and they wouldn't release it for a long time, and it took her a long time to edit it, and there were all kinds of kind of defamation towards Elaine May that came out in and around it. But it's really I had I've been a fan of her since I was a kid, but it's a movie I never even had the chance to see until like several months ago when I saw it.
Yeah, I
So you
think
could say she had problems turning over a new leaf.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it was in obscurity until Criterion, they put out the Blu-ray, I think, last year.
Yeah.
Until that point, it was basically like persona non grata.
Yeah. It's really and like I said, it has Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, who were both in a Columbo episode that I watched just last week.
Wow, Peter Falk and Columbo. Ben, you were our judge. You got a recommendation for us this week?
It's sort of a cop-out, but too many people have seen the remake of The Wicker Man. Not enough people have seen the original. I only saw it when I was doing a 70s horror marathon, to my shame. So see the original. It's much, much better.
Ryan, what do you got for us?
In honor of the occasion, my recommendation is a short film that I recently rewatched for the Coolness Chronicles, directed by one of our guests and starring our other guest, called The Frank from 2014. It is a lovely little short film.
Oh,
nice.
Thank you. Thank you for knowing about it.
That's what I call a great recommendation.
Yes. Available nowhere.
Yes, it is very difficult to come by right at the moment, but hopefully that will change.
Hopefully when live shows are possible in person again, they can pick it up from maybe swag booths. I know that's where I got my copy from.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm writing that down for my lawyer. What's it called? Swag boost?
Swag booth. No, don't shut down Swag Booth.
What is it called?
No, I got it from you guys at a live show.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, at your Swag Booth.
I am so quick to sue anybody. I should really temper my.
Are we all in the clear on this show so far, or do we need to worry?
Well, as long as
we're okay now.
And put it out somewhere, I think it's fine. But
that's where I think I've gotten all your books too from was also your live shows.
Oh well, thanks for mentioning The Frank, which was a music video starring Frank as Frankenstein's monster. It's also got J. Elvis Weinstein, Mary Jo Pehl, Dave Gruber Allen, a lot of our friends from Mystery Science Theater and from stand-up. Joseph Scrimshaw. All of these people I was trying to kiss up to because I knew they would have better careers than me. And I thought I could come to them for a job at some point. But maybe in the future that'll be available. But there's a wall of lawyers I got to pile through, and then there's like inertia. So
yeah. So watch out, Tracy's coming with lawyers. Dylan, what do you got?
As dirty as it sounds.
Oh yeah.
Not as. The key word is as.
Dylan, what do you got for recommendations?
I was going to use it as a point in the case, but I overlooked it because I was saying why kill the planeman, and it was making me think about Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island when the ferry boat captain was in on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and recommend Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Wow.
You have so many Scooby-Doo recommendations. It's like me and Ernest.
Speaking of which Ernest are you recommending this week?
No, actually, I'm going to actually do a recent movie, and I'm good. I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to recommend 2019's Midsummer. I think it does a lot of what it reminds me a lot of the original Wicker Man in that it takes you the fish out of water, puts you in a place you're uncomfortable with a pagan cult, and kind of similar to 2016. I think there's a lot of great feminist themes. It's basically a breakup movie with horror. So Midsummer. quite excellent. And
I like to
I
call
won't
it
give away the
a,
ending, but
It is a Technicolor panic attack. Is the best way that I can describe it, Zara.
that was my punk band in college. So that's great. That's our recommendations. Trace and Frank, thank you so much for coming on live. We're gonna and joining us. We're gonna tune in to your show August 18th at 8:00 Eastern, and the link is here in the description. And I'm looking forward to seeing the Tingler again with you guys.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
It was fun.
Yeah. No problem. We'd love to have you back sometime. Maybe we can get you guys as lawyers head to head against each other on some movie you disagree with.
Sure. We'll even watch the movie. I know that sounds weird, but
if the lawyers are doing their job, they don't need to.
And with that, we are all out of show this week. We hope you'll join us next time as the Reels of Justice keep turning.
Adios, everyone.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, on Instagram, Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.